3 centuries after a single escape at Actium, imagine Alexandria still ruled by a Ptolemaic dynasty, descended from Caesarion. The pharaohs guides Egyptian ships into a harbor no Roman governor commands. This is not a guaranteed golden age, but a surviving Hellenistic kingdom holding its place between larger powers. Historically, Actium on the 2nd of September 31 BCE broke Antony and Cleopatra's coalition. Cleopatra and Antony did escape with part of their fleet, but their wider position collapsed, and Egypt became a Roman province. What if that escape had preserved enough ships, money, and commanders to make Egypt costly to conquer? The premise is speculative, and the first question is not whether Egypt becomes invincible. It is whether Rome, denied a quick annexation, and Egypt's entire treasury must accept a less certain Eastern order. What kind of Roman state emerges when its most valuable prize remains beyond its grasp? Cleopatra VII ruled a wealthy, strategically vital kingdom, but her room to maneuver was narrowing. Her alliance with Mark Antony was meant to preserve Egypt's autonomy and reshape the Eastern Mediterranean before Octavian could consolidate Roman power. Rome had been torn apart by civil war since Julius Caesar's assassination. By the 30s BCE, Octavian and Antony were not simply rivals for office. Each represented a different coalition, and each needed victory before the other could define Rome's future. Antony brought Roman legions and Eastern clients. Cleopatra brought revenue, ships, and dynastic legitimacy. Their partnership was displayed most clearly at the donations of Alexandria in 34 BCE, a ceremony that gave Octavian powerful propaganda against them. At Actium, the stakes were therefore larger than one battle. Octavian needed to break an Eastern coalition. Antony and Cleopatra needed to preserve a route back to Egypt. Neither side could assume that a victory at sea would settle every problem on land. By late summer 31 BCE, Antony's camp faced thin supplies, illness, and desertions. Agrippa's operations had cut routes and trapped the fleet near Actium. Even in an alternate timeline, the coalition begins from a position of weakness. Antony's real escape plan depended on reaching open water. Here, he and Cleopatra make a harsher choice before the battle. Abandon most of the camp, load the treasury and selected veterans onto seaworthy transports, and give their commanders one objective: break through, then sail for Egypt. In this speculative divergence, an unseasonal squall disrupts part of Agrippa's outer screen just as Antony moves. It does not destroy the blockade. It creates only a brief, dangerous opening, enough for a coordinated withdrawal, not a triumph. Cleopatra's lighter squadron leads through the opening, while Antony's larger ships form a rear guard. Their aim is not to sink Agrippa's fleet, but to delay pursuit long enough for the treasury ships and a corps of officers to clear the Gulf. The breakout remains costly. Many ships and most of the stranded land army are lost to surrender or dispersal. But Cleopatra's treasury, part of the fleet, and enough experienced commanders reach Egypt to turn Octavian's next step from a pursuit into an invasion. In Egypt, survival changes the calculation, but not the danger. Cleopatra and Antony concentrate money on coastal defenses, grain stores, and the eastern approach to the Nile Delta, knowing Octavian can still return with a larger army. Octavian has won the field at Actium, but not the whole war. An invasion of Egypt now means desert routes, long supply lines, and a fortified coast, costs that must be justified to allies and to Rome itself. Roman probes meet prepared garrisons along the eastern frontier. They gain ground slowly, but every delay consumes supplies and exposes the army to heat and disease. This is pressure, not an effortless Egyptian victory. Parthia has reason to watch. Reports of Roman commitments near Egypt could encourage raids and diplomatic pressure in Syria, forcing Octavian to weigh one unfinished war against vulnerabilities across the eastern frontier. Cleopatra offers a bargain: tribute, preferred grain contracts, and an alliance against common threats in exchange for Egyptian self-rule. The offer is expensive, but it gives Octavian a way to claim security without committing to an open-ended conquest. At home, Cleopatra binds the offer to dynastic legitimacy. She publicly elevates the teenage Caesarion as co-ruler under Egyptian ritual forms, an alternate timeline ceremony, plausible in broad Ptolemaic Egyptian conventions, but not a recorded historical event. Back in Rome, an Egyptian campaign without a quick conclusion becomes a political problem. Octavian remains powerful, but he must spend legitimacy as well as money to keep a difficult war moving. The issue is not that Rome suddenly becomes poor. It is that Egypt's wealth is not available as a one-time conquest windfall or direct provincial revenue. Public works, military rewards, and grain arrangements become harder choices. Pressure near Syria and Anatolia gives Octavian another reason to compromise. Protecting Rome's established eastern frontier may matter more than exhausting an army for the direct annexation of Egypt. In this scenario, negotiations produce what we may call the Alexandrian Accord, a fictional settlement, not a real treaty. Egypt accepts tribute and strategic limits. Octavian accepts that a compliant buffer is preferable to a ruinous final campaign. The settlement is fragile. Caesarion is recognized as Egyptian co-ruler only after renouncing any claim to Caesar's Roman inheritance, while Antony loses his Roman command and remains under close Egyptian protection. Neither side gets everything it wants. The accord secures annual tribute, negotiated grain deliveries, and a defensive understanding against Parthia. Egypt survives as a constrained ally, not a fully independent superpower, wealthy enough to matter, vulnerable enough to keep bargaining. That breathing room lets Alexandria remain a rival center of trade and scholarship. It does not preserve every ancient institution unchanged, but a court that invests in ports, archives, and schools could keep the city unusually influential. Rome still expands and still commands enormous resources. Yet without direct control of Egypt's revenue, some imperial projects may be slower, and Eastern policy may rely more on negotiated supply than administrative absorption. The Eastern Mediterranean becomes a more crowded frontier. Roman roads and garrisons press toward Judea and Syria, while Ptolemaic posts protect Egyptian interests nearby. Borders become places of patrols, trade, and recurring negotiation. For as long as the dynasty can manage succession and pay for defense, Egypt can balance stronger neighbors rather than simply submit to one. Its leverage comes from grain, ports, and diplomacy, not from being immune to pressure. If the dynasty survives its first generations, Cleopatra and Caesarion become founding symbols rather than a defeated last chapter. But a long-lived state still depends on tax systems, elite bargains, and heirs who can hold Alexandria, the Delta, and Upper Egypt together. Egypt remains a crucial grain supplier to Roman cities, but through negotiated contracts rather than provincial requisition. Higher or less predictable prices could alter urban subsidies and give Egyptian merchants political leverage, while also inviting Roman resentment. Alexandria's cultural fusion could remain distinctive. Greek education, Egyptian ritual life, and practical administration adapting to changing trade routes. Continuity would come through institutions and people, not through an unchanged ancient costume. Christianity would still reach Egypt, but a sovereign court could shape church patronage differently from Roman rule. An alternate Egyptian Christian institution might develop beside, rather than replace, the historical Coptic tradition, an uncertain divergence, not a claim about real church history. Later Persian powers would test the kingdom as relentlessly as Rome had. A Ptolemaic Egypt that survives would need mobile frontier forces, naval supply, and allies in the Levant. A wealthy buffer is also an attractive target. By the age of Byzantium, an enduring Egypt could become a neighboring partner, rival, or occasional ally rather than an imperial province. The precise relationship would depend on wars, dynastic marriages, and the balance of power in Syria. Rome's history would not be reduced to a missing treasure chest. Still, a state that must purchase Egyptian supplies and negotiate access to its ports may face sharper fiscal trade-offs during later crises, with consequences that differ from province to province. Egypt would face its own breaking points: succession disputes, rivalry between Alexandria and regional elites, religious tensions, and revolts over taxes. Survival for centuries would be an achievement repeatedly renewed, not a permanent reward for one naval escape. If this kingdom still stands when Islamic powers rise, Egypt becomes a formidable neighboring state rather than a conquered Byzantine province. The encounter could produce war, alliance, tribute, or fragmentation. The point is that the Eastern Mediterranean begins from a different political map. One escape would not guarantee an empire, but it could preserve choices, forcing Rome, Egypt, and their neighbors to bargain across a Mediterranean that never fully belonged to one power. This has been Historix Vault. More alternate histories are coming.